4 tonight. Let's start with some fact or fiction. Hey, Monica McNutt, if I said the Celtics are not only on the verge of a title, but a dynasty, would that be fact or fiction?
Greeny, I think I'd have to say it was fact. I mean, we watched this team pretty much walk through the Eastern Conference during the regular season, and if they capped this thing off with a sweep of a team out of the muchly praised and challenging Western Conference, they're still young. This could be a minute.
A lot to say about them as we continue. Meanwhile, Alan, I'll come to you. If I said right now Jaylen Brown is the MVP of these finals, would that be fact or fiction?
That's fact, because it's not just the offense that he's providing at 25 points a game, 8 rebounds a game as well. Look at what he's doing defensively against Luka Doncic, and overall, he's giving you 2 steals a game, a block and a half per game as well, getting it done on both ends of the floor. He right now is leading the way for MVP of this series.
Been spectacular, as have many of his teammates. All right, CJ, I'll come to you. If someone were to say Luka will not win a championship until he gets better on the defensive end, would that be fact or fiction?
I think that's fact, and we're not asking Luka to be a shutdown defender. We're just asking him to give the effort, to be locked in, be cognizant of where his man is, and to really show that he is taking strides towards championship mentality, which is making it tougher for the defense to score on you, not giving up catch-and-shoot threes to Sam Hauser, not giving up backdoor cuts when you're not paying attention, but making people play in the yard, give up twos, contested twos, not open trades.
That's well said. Look, Doncic coming off of a day and a game in which he's heard about as loud a criticism as he probably has at any point in his career. And to his credit, he sat down yesterday with our Malika Andrews to talk about, among other things, his defense.
Your defense has been under a lot of scrutiny, maybe because you're hurt, maybe because of something else. Do you feel like you can help your teammates more? Do you think the scrutiny you're under is fair?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're always going to talk about it, but at the end of the day, I don't think the biggest problem is our defense at this point. I think we scored 3 games under 100 points. I mean, that gives credit to Boston's defense. But I think our offense is a little bit more problematic right now than defense.
All right, that was part of his interesting sit-down with Malika. So, Monica and Windman, I'll bring you in here. You led the way on this conversation immediately after Game 3. What did you think of how he answered that?
Well, I do give him credit for following through with this interview, and I give Malika credit for asking tough questions in what had to be a very difficult day. This is classic Luka. One, in his interviews yesterday, both in the press conference and to Malika, he said he needs to be better with dealing with the officials. He has literally said this for years, almost monthly. It feels like it. It never changes. And again, as brilliant and awesome of a player as he is, as great of a player of a run he has had in this postseason, you have to acknowledge all of that. And I will even allow that he is correct, that on balance, the Mavericks defense isn't the quote-unquote problem because they're not giving up 130 points a game. But it's just classic that he would take a question about his defense and say, yeah, but it's not really our problem. Of course it's part of the problem. The Celtics' number 1 A and B focus is attacking him defensively. So it's so frustrating for me to talk about Luka because I don't want to undercut how awesome he is and how brilliant he's been. But there is so much about Luka that at times can be frustrating. Trust me, people here in Dallas are very familiar with it. They love him, they hug him, they appreciate him, and he sometimes drives them crazy. And this answer is a classic example of that.
Yeah, look, it is a complicated situation because, of course, they would not be sniffing the NBA Finals without the brilliance of Luka Doncic. So everyone acknowledges that, as they do. But I think, Wendy, the heavy sigh that you breathed at the beginning of that answer could have really said it all. Monica, we didn't have you yesterday. What are the right things to say about Luka Doncic as he heads into a Game 4 tonight where the world is looking to see if he can find redemption?
Simply put, Greeny, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Luka is the centerpiece of this Dallas Mavericks organization, and thus the scrutiny comes with that role. I hear where Wendy's coming from, and I agree, but frankly, it doesn't matter what he says in that interview. He's got 1 game to prove that he can be all in on both sides of the basketball and be a focused catalyst for this Dallas Mavericks squad. And so we have come around on the conversation in terms of the Boston Celtics and acknowledging the journey and what it has taken for them to get here. I am of the mindset that it doesn't happen in year one. And even though this is year two with Kyrie and Luka, you add those very important role players. This is closer to a year one phenomenon than it is a team that has seasoning. And Luka, too, is in a space where he has to understand the weight of leadership.
Best player in the world. And you didn't get a lot of pushback. He certainly remains in that conversation. But it's been a rough start to these finals for him.
Yeah, I probably crowned him too soon, but it's what we saw in the first 3 rounds to do that. But now that we have seen him in these first couple of games of the finals, you look at tonight and you say to yourself, this is the most important game of his career. What you don't want it to be is the last most important game of his career. But there's a lot at stake for him. He owes it to himself. He owes it to his team. He owes it to the game for him to have his best performance of the playoffs. He's got to do that for one reason and one reason only. What he can't do is leave what we saw in Game 3 as the lasting impression of what has been, as Monica and Wendy talked about, a magnificent run in the playoffs for him. He can't leave that in the back of our minds, because if that's the lasting impression of his playoffs, he starts to move a little closer to like James Harden and less closer to Nikola Jokic, which is, again, in the best player in the league category. That's critical for him. They might not win this series, but this game tonight for Luka Doncic, everything's on the line for him when it comes to reputation. And all he's got to do is talk to Jason Tatum about it when it comes to what can stick with you after a poor performance in the finals.
You know, CJ, to sort of put a ribbon on it, there are really two separate conversations, and we had them yesterday. There's the defense stuff, and then there's just the carrying on with the officiating, which I don't know how much that impacts the guys on the floor. That's what I want to ask you about, because it's draining as a fan, like just watching it, watching him getting into it with the officials all the time. Yeah. It almost gets, I'm almost tired watching it here, because that's something that someone can say something to him about. And is that something we're watching for tonight?
Yeah, I think the complaining was worse than the defense, honestly. He's been getting scored on all year. We all get scored on, let's be honest here. It's a make or miss league, and guys are going to score on you. It's about the effort. It's about the intention. And I think there was a lack of focus and concentration. Maybe it was the Boston Celtics frustrating him because of how they were covering him, how they were targeting him while he was on defense. But I think him kind of flopping, flailing his body, you know, getting those meaningless fouls where it's not really a play on the ball, fouling Peyton Pritchard at 40 feet away from the basket. Those are the types of things that you can't do in these types of situations. You're going to get scored on. Jaylen Brown's going to score. Tatum's going to score. They're going to hit tough twos. That's what they do. They're going to hit tough threes. But you have to make it difficult, and you have to show your teammates that you're willing to do whatever it takes to stay on the court, because they can't win without you, and they haven't been winning with you.
So let me get let me stay on this here. You know what? We were going to get some Stephen A stuff here and get into Kyrie Irving, but let's live in this for a minute and then we'll come back, because the Kyrie thing is really an entirely separate conversation. I mean, is it reasonable to say, Wendy, we talked about, I mean, Luka Doncic has played huge games. You talked yesterday about all these games he plays for the Slovenian national team and how important that is to him. He led this team to a conference final, a team that wasn't as good as this one, didn't have Kyrie Irving on it a couple of years ago. Here he is in the NBA Finals. How would you describe what you think is at stake for him in this game in particular tonight?
Well, they're playing a better team, and that has to be recognized. This is really a coronation of the Celtics. But we're really looking at the future of the league and Luka, and we want to see it. And I just go back to the 2007 finals, which was the moment for LeBron when he got into the finals against the Spurs, against a much better team, a team that totally outclassed his Cavs team. And I think the Cavs were a 4 seed, or I don't even know what they were, but they were an underdog getting there, just like the Mavericks were an underdog getting here. And LeBron sat up there after getting swept, and he said, I just realized in this last few days how much better I have to be to get to this level. This was an incredible education experience for me. I have got to get better. And it was a miracle that he got them there. It was a wing and a prayer and his dominance and brilliance that got him there. And nobody would say a word about it. But he realized, going up against Tim Duncan and Ginobili and all that stuff, that he had to get better. And that's what I think I'd like to see from Luka. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's my problem, not his. But that's what I'd like to see. And he's just let me down in that regard. And again, maybe that's my problem.